It's me, who else? I'm Cassandra Harner from Minc Law, and I'm not a lawyer, I just work here. And it's my pleasure to bring to you the story of this Afroman defamation trial that is a bad lawsuit. And I get to explain some legal stuff that had to happen for Afroman to win. I love being a resident of Ohio, which is an absolute meme. So, Afroman is Joseph Foreman of 'Cause I Got High fame. He lives in Adams County outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, where he has a home studio, wife and children, and is an entertainer and musician for a living. So one summer day, about 4 years ago, the county police got a tip from a confidential informant. The warrant shows that they believe that he has marijuana derivatives, any and all other drugs of abuse, drug paraphernalia, including scales, packaging materials, and paraphernalia used for the sale and administration of said drugs, money obtained from the sale of illegal drugs, documentation regarding the sale of illegal drugs, as well as weapons used for the protection of the above, which are being concealed in violation of an ordinance, possession of drugs in violation of an ordinance, trafficking in drugs in violation of an ordinance, and kidnapping. Kind of comes out of nowhere, right? Crazy. Where did they get the information from? Who is this confidential informant? They describe in the affidavit a conversation that a detective has when he goes to the informant's house for a knock and talk. So they went to arrest this woman for drugs. The weed that they found in her house, she says, it's not hers. It belongs to Afroman. She says she's worked for Afroman as his personal assistant for 10 years. They go to dispensaries together. They go on tour
together. And she's been in his house recently as a month ago. And she says that he has a basement he calls the dungeon. And that's where he keeps women hostage and forces them to shit in buckets if they disobey him. She described a Hispanic woman named Joe, and it was in a basement dungeon. And she and her estranged husband picked Joe up in Mississippi to bring to Afroman. And she says that he helped to build a room at a big wall where he stores marijuana. And he says that he has a video of Afroman peeing that woman. The warrant names as
Tasha Chamberlain. So Afroman believes the informant is Tasha Chamberlain, who has a long list of charges in her criminal record, including in 2019 testing positive for methamphetamine, amphetamine, THC, MDMA, and buprenorphine, which is an opiate. Chamberlain, the confidential informant, she got a knock and talk. Her story didn't seem to need a lot of corroboration before going to get the warrant to raid Afroman's house. Let's talk about the raid. The police broke his gate, his front door. They rifled through all of his stuff, his CD collection. They took his cash, which they apparently took as evidence. They found some weed, sure. They disconnected some of his security cameras he had set up, and they ogled his lemon pound cake.
Lemon pound cake.
Ultimately, they found nothing criminal. He doesn't even have a basement. Upsetting enough as it is, but after his cash was returned to him, he finds out that some of it, $400 worth, is missing. So Afroman tried to file a lawsuit, arguing that the raid was unlawful, but it was dismissed. Police do have an obligation to do their due diligence to corroborate the informant's claims, but the judge determined the raid was ultimately legal. So Afroman has to pay for the damage himself. He doesn't get repaid or get his $400 back. So what he does next is what he does best.
I entertain for a living like you practice law for a living, so I have to go to work.
He's paying his bills. He did what arguably any artist would do and is within his First Amendment rights. He clowned on him. He made dozens of these videos. He accuses them of stealing his money, and he also says in the Batteram Hymn of the Police whistleblower that
Newland Sexton kids, that's true. Now he's stealing my money too. My proof's on the internet.
To the jaunty tune of Glory, Glory, Hallelujah. In March 2023, the Adams County Sheriff deputies file a lawsuit against Afroman. They claimed not only defamation, but also false light, violation of privacy, commercial misappropriation of likeness that is profiting off of the use of their faces, and they have suffered death threats, harm to reputation, and want $4 million in damages. Afroman, with the help of ACLU, files a motion to dismiss. They argue for a slap suit, which essentially means that this is a frivolous suit meant to squash free speech. So I read this motion to dismiss, and what's fun is that they reference another case in Ohio that is another Ohio man memeing on the local police, but it was found that he was within his rights. So that means that there is a legal precedent here in Ohio for this case. As for the invasion of privacy claims, the document describes them as a particularly odd fit for the statements at issue here. What the police do while on duty is a matter of public concern. I made sure to run this by one of our attorneys, Mackenzie, who also agrees that the courts don't seem to like this. It seems like double dipping. To me, it just seems like they're trying to have their lemon pound cake and eat it too. So the speech that Afroman was making is protected whether or not he makes a profit off of it. You can't be a nobody and have the claim for the commercial likeness. You have to be famous for that to work. But if they're claiming invasion of privacy, that can only work if they're a private figure. If you get one of these claims to work, the other is not working. Either way, the judge ended up dismissing these claims. But Ohio didn't have the right laws that would support the SLAPP claim. These 2 counts were allowed to proceed to trial, which was false light and defamation. False light and defamation overlap a lot. Essentially, defamation has these distinct requirements: a false statement of fact that can be proven true or false. The statements made by Afroman were Afroman's fault. So in this case, they're made with actual malice because police officers are public officials, which means that he has to know that they were false when he said it. And that it's going to identify these individual officers to a third party, which is the internet, the public, and these statements cause the officers harm. So false light requires that the statement is false or misleading. Misleading enough that the widespread public believes the false impression of someone because of that statement. So really the difference is that the false light claim has to be very widespread, very public. But a defamation claim has to be provably false, and it just has to be shared with a third party, which is just one other person besides the two of you. But again, it's you're double dipping. If you are trying to prove this claim and this claim at the same time, some of them contradict. But these are the claims that are brought to trial, which means that the plaintiffs need to prove during this trial these things. What Afroman said about the officers was false. Afroman knew it was false when he said it, and that a reasonable person would believe what Afroman was saying was true. So that's what the officers of Adams County had to do with their attorneys to win this case. Let's talk about the statements at issue. Afroman accused the officers of stealing his money, the $400, the statement that one of the officers is a pedophile, and he alluded to having sex with one of the officers' wives. Lisa Phillips is maybe a man, but we'll get to that.
You have no evidence that Brian Newland ever molested little boys, do you?
If you look at the picture, he's holding the little boy butt. It's too much for me. So if you just use your eyeballs.
It's tricky because since Afroman needs to be proven that he's acting with actual malice, they want him to say something that proves that he knew this man wasn't a pedophile. So Afroman is at least acting like he believes it. It's really hard to prove a negative, And besides, you have to actually prove that a reasonable person interpreted the statement is literally true.
Look at the song by NWA. Or they call it the police. I think I said that right.
Certified pedophiles trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor.
Let's talk about Lisa Phillips. One exhibit displayed at trial was a post that Afroman made about her, where he says, "Has anyone in Adams County verified her vagina?" Rude, Afroman. Very rude. However, not enough to be defamation. And besides, accusations of being gay or trans shouldn't really cause you damages, now should they? It shouldn't affect your reputation negatively, should it? I'm not a lawyer. The court is struggling to understand how to play a video for several minutes, but then they show Afroman's music video called Lick 'Em Low, Lisa. Officer Lisa starts to cry on the stand. Look, if Afroman's accusing her of having a bigger than him and his own wife, if that's enough to make a whole sheriff cry, I mean, I don't know her life. I'm not a lawyer. But at the end of the day, it wasn't enough for a legal claim for defamation. Randy Walters.
This may sound stupid, but being a son of a bitch is not a crime, correct? No.
I think the craziest moment in this trial for me is this man on the stand. Randy Walters was asked if his wife is having sex with Afroman. In the video, "Why Are You Disconnecting My Video Camera?" has a line where Afroman says, "Randy Walters, private pound, his wife, doggy style." So naturally, when they examined Randy as a witness, they asked him, "Do you think that this statement could reasonably be interpreted as a fact? Essentially, is your wife f***ing Afroman?"
You're claiming that is the defamation statement, is that he said he had sex with your wife.
Yes.
But we all know that's not true, correct?
To which he responds, "I don't know." What do you mean?
Wait, you don't know if your wife's cheating on you or not?
You want to go there?
So it's something we cannot verify the truth of? Is it a thing that can be verified, true or false?
Ask your client.
Not only is this cell phone so devastating to his personal, just his aura points, but it pretty much ruined the case for him. All he had to say was, "There is no way that my wife is f***ing Afroman," because then it would establish that Afroman was lying and that it could qualify for defamation, but now he left room for it to be true, so he doesn't know whether or not his own wife is f***ing Afroman. Doggy style. He goes on to say that he's getting all these death threats because of the lies, mostly because they're accusing him of stealing the money. And it's damaging his reputation. He would really have to prove that the death threats are because of that particular statement, right? They ask him questions about, how he was treated before all of this. He has been treated disrespectfully in the past. He has been put in danger before. So what about this situation is different, right? And he doesn't really have an answer. Look, I don't deny that being in the public eye this way is really dangerous. It's a really terrible situation to be so deeply in the vitriol of the public like this. But that alone is not enough to win this case. Randy here was asked on the stand, "You don't believe everything you read on the internet, do you?" So this adds to the reasonable person defense, assuming that Randy is a reasonable person. He was also asked, "How you conduct yourself during a search reflects your reputation." And he says, "Yes."
If I show you some of the surveillance footage, can you explain how that is showing respect?
And they spend some time trying to get Officer Walters to admit that he flipped off Afroman's security camera, which he denies. But regardless, they're trying to determine if the damage to reputation is really because of his own actions. There's a lot more going on than being accused of a crime of stealing money and another man f***ing his wife that is affecting his reputation. In other words, he stepped in it. But Afroman needs to win this case. He has acted within his rights of the First Amendment of free speech to make a parody of a public official. For this to be considered parody, he has to prove that no reasonable person would assume that the statements he's making are facts, right? And trial testimony is trying to determine what they think a reasonable person would think. Let's talk about Rhonda Grooms, the ex-wife of the sheriff deputy, Sean Grooms. She is Afroman's, I think, only witness. Bold. In her testimony, they use Cardi B's song WAP.
I think I've heard
Sorry,
it.
no, strike that. On wet ass pussy.
Yes.
I hate to say it in a court. She was asked whether or not her classroom of kids had heard the song. They have. And if they thought the song was a literal fact, they don't. So this establishes that the woman and the kids in the class are reasonable people. She doesn't believe it's derogatory towards women either, which is kind of goated.
Even though it says nasty things about them?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the artist's opinion.
Her classroom of children did mention that they had seen some of the videos, but she also testifies that the children never changed how they behaved towards her while this was going on. Strong. But importantly, she says Afroman's post never affected her relationship to her then husband, the sheriff deputy. She has since got a restraining order against her ex-husband during their divorce.
Yes, I had a restraining order.
The plaintiff wants to determine that the divorce is because of Afroman's statements, which would be huge evidence of damages, which would help the case.
You said you're sorry to be here. Why are you sorry to be here?
Because from my recollection, my ex-husband had said that this was part of the reason we got divorced.
Implication here is that she does not agree.
What people are expressing when they call him a thief is not a literal statement. It is not a fact. It is a social commentary on the fact that they didn't do things correctly.
There's a lot more here, right? You can go watch endless amounts of videos, but let's just jump to the verdict, okay? I'm filming this on March 25th, 2026. The jury deliberated for like 5 hours, and they decided fully in favor of Afroman. Congratulations. But one more thing. The judge decided based on the merits of the case, the cost of the trial is split between the plaintiff and the defendant. A lot of the time the loser has to pay the legal fees, but in this case, the judge decided that they can go Dutch for some reason. So, Afroman still has to pay for half of these legal fees, and has to pay for all the damage that the cops caused to his house, and he can never get the time that he spent on this trial back. Winning essentially means that he can finally put all of this behind him, and he can just keep doing what he does best, which is exercising his American right to go viral.
Even though I don't hate him and I forgive him, I told him I'm still gonna sing that song.